Hello everyone, this is Nyessa, and welcome to Let's Talk Elder Scrolls Online Beta Reactions. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my reactions to the solo PvE aspects of the game. And there are two reasons for that. The first reason is the more obvious one, that I just didn't have a chance to experience much more than that. I only got to play for a few hours on Saturday, and that was mostly going through character creation and exploring the user interface and all the settings, and not much actual playing the game. Then on Friday, I only had a very short time in the evening to play. It was a very busy day for me. So it wasn't until Sunday afternoon that I really got a chance to get into the game. And I didn't have enough time to get far enough to experience the PvP or even to group up with any friends to play together. I had hoped to get together with Chris from Megatron Gameplay and a couple of his viewers to do some gaming together, but that never happened because by the time I got out of the starting area for the Ebonheart Pact, the beta was practically over. More on that later. The second reason why I'm going to focus on the solo experience today is because that's really where my own experience as a gamer is. I'm not much of a multiplayer. In fact, the last time I played in any kind of multiplayer game was over 10 years ago when I was playing the Other Space Mush. And if you don't know what a mush is, that stands for Multi-User Shared Hallucination, which was one of the predecessors to what we now know as MMOs. But it was a text-based game, and I only played it for a little while when I was in high school, which was a while ago. So if you're looking to find out if The Elder Scrolls Online is a game that you will enjoy as an MMO, and you're looking for that from the point of view of an experienced MMO player, you're not going to find that from me. What I can offer you is my perspective as somebody who plays single-player RPGs and who's been a long-time fan of the Elder Scrolls series. So first things first, I'm going to talk briefly about character creation. Now, I did not spend a lot of time playing around with the character creation for all of the different races. I really just focused on the Argonians, but I did make sure to spend a little bit of time looking at the differences between the male and female character creation. And I have to say, I'm pretty pleased overall. Now, I did notice, and this really didn't surprise me at all, because it was the same in Skyrim, and it's been the same in pretty much every game that has any kind of variation to the body type at all, is that there's a lot less variety in the body size for the females than there is for the males. And that was a little disappointing. So with the males you had a much wider range between very skinny male characters and very bulky male characters, and with the females there really wasn't a whole lot of difference between the smallest and the largest body sizes. That said, I was still pretty pleased with the amount of variation that was available, even if there wasn't as much for the female characters as there was for the male. Now with the faces, I wasn't quite as happy with what was available. There were still a lot of options to play with, and that was great, but I felt like there wasn't as much variety when it came down to it. I was pleased, as an Argonian fan, to see the reappearance of fins along with feathers and horns for the, quote, hairstyles, unquote. So that made me happy. And I liked that there were different skin textures for the Argonians. So I got to choose from textures that were more pebbly versus more scaly, and there were some interesting color patterns that were also available. And I think I'm going to stop there with the talk about the character creation, at least in terms of appearance. And I'm just going to say a little bit about the classes. For me, there really wasn't much choice there. It was very obvious which one I was going to go with, because I wanted to play a stealthy character, a stealthy archer, because, if you're going to be a hunter in a very dangerous swamp, you're not going to want to make a lot of noise or draw a lot of attention to yourself, so Nightblade was the obvious choice for me, and I was pretty happy as I played with that choice. Which brings me to the next thing that I want to talk about a bit, which is the combat. Now, for me, as somebody who has not played MMOs, and in particular has not played World of Warcraft, I was a little bit nervous about going into this game with basically no experience in MMO combat systems. Now, as I've prepared for the Elder Scrolls Online, I've been talking a lot with a dear friend of mine who is an avid World of Warcraft player and has been for years. And she's been telling me about how combat works there, with things like hotbars, and basically she had me shaking in my boots, because I don't do well with hotkeys in general, and having to rely on them for combat just does not appeal to me. So this ended up being one area in which I was pleasantly surprised. I found that it was a lot easier to get used to than I was expecting, even though my previous experience with games that rely on hotbars have not been very positive. I usually have not been able to get used to them at all, and have been very clumsy with them, but I found myself getting into the combat system in the Elder Scrolls Online without too much difficulty. At first it was a little bit awkward, and I kept forgetting which ability I had connected to which key, but once I had them settled in a place that felt comfortable on the hotbar, it actually ended up being pretty natural. And before too long, I did find myself reaching automatically for the correct keys without having to think about it too much. And that's what was worrying me. If I had to think about what key I was pressing, that would really kill the combat for me, and not in a good way. But it turned out that I didn't need to be worried on that count. Now, I did find as an archer that the archery didn't feel all that natural to me. In Skyrim, I love archery because it really gives the sense that you're pulling back on the string, that you're aiming really carefully. It's very immersive, and it's not so immersive in the Elder Scrolls Online. Now, I know I went into this not expecting it to be anywhere near as immersive as Skyrim, because that wouldn't really be a fair comparison to make. But it was still a little bit awkward to get used to at first, and it took me a while to feel comfortable with how the archery felt. It's a bit hard to put my finger on what exactly about it didn't feel right, but it just didn't seem like it had any actual weight to it, if that makes sense. However, I did get used to it, and I got used to the hotkeys, and I found that combat is pretty enjoyable in this game. And I was especially glad to find that there was some strategy to the combat. It wasn't just spamming my mouse buttons and my hotkeys. I actually had to think about the situation a little bit and figure out what I was going to do first, second, third, and react to different enemies in different ways. And I imagine that would be even more true when you get into group situations where you're working with other people, though I didn't have a chance to try that out very much. Now, I did notice that I ended up working together with people who were also fighting in the same area as I was, even if we weren't grouped up. So most of the time it felt like we were still working together instead of competing with each other, though there were a couple of exceptions to that. One of those times was when I was lining up for a stealth shot, when right before I fired, somebody else came around the corner and used an ability to pull that enemy closer to them and out of my aim. So that was a little bit irritating, but that's a sort of situation that can't really be helped when you're playing with a lot of other people in the world. So I can't complain too much about that. So all in all, I was pretty happy with the gameplay mechanics in general, and that includes the crafting system, which is going to be a big thing for me since I always love crafting in the Elder Scrolls games. Though I was interested to find that I was doing a lot more cooking than alchemy, even though I had in mind from the beginning that I was going to be doing a lot of alchemy. Now, part of this is because there were a lot more cooking ingredients to be found out in the world. They were a lot easier to find, and the alchemy ingredients were a little bit, well, actually a lot scarcer. So that made alchemy slower to learn. But I also found that the foods were a little bit more convenient to use than the potions, because I could just, eat or drink something ahead of going to the battle, whereas with the potions I'd have to mess around with quick slots, which I'm not really comfortable with yet. However, I feel like that's probably something that I'm going to get used to, the same way I got used to using the hotbar in general, and I expect that alchemy will be a bigger thing for me when we actually get into the release. So I think I'm going to leave it at that for this video. And in the next video, I'm going to talk a little bit about my reactions to the world and the story that I've seen so far. And I'm going to address the all-important question that so many people have been asking. Is this really an Elder Scrolls game? You'll hear my answer to that question in the next Let's Talk video. But in the meantime, I'd like to hear from you. If you were in the beta this weekend, what are your thoughts about the gameplay mechanics of the Elder Scrolls Online? Do you like them, or are there things that you would prefer to be different? And are you coming to this from the perspective of an MMO player, or an Elder Scrolls fan, or somebody who enjoys both? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.